So hi everybody, and welcome to today's discussion on the future is real time, how leading brands are reshaping their marketing operations to keep up with demand. This is the second in a series of We Are Amnet events relating to content at scale. My name is Anil Narani. I'm the managing partner at TKM Consultants, and I have the very easy job today of introducing all the wonderful speakers that we have with us. A huge thank you also to the event sponsors We Are Amnet. They're part of the Energy Group and leaders in smart shoring creative production. I work very closely with the We Are Amnet team, who are always looking to uncover new insights, understand the latest trends, and ultimately progress the conversation in those areas most affecting our industry. As we know, the demand for content has skyrocketed as companies look to accelerate their digital strategies with highly personalized and highly hyper-localized real-time content. As consumers engage in always-on conversations, this has enabled the growth of data-driven marketing, active listening, and dynamic content creation. I was looking at some stats earlier, and it seems that 76% of brands reported that real-time marketing increased their audience engagement. Real-time personalized messages deliver a 6 times higher transaction rate, and up to 80% of DCO, dynamic content optimization ads using AI are more likely to be clicked on than regular display ads. Despite all of this, 60% of marketers are struggling to personalize content in real time. However, we have some wonderful speakers with us today to help us navigate the real-time challenges and share their experiences. In terms of order, we're going to kick off with David Pritchard, the Commercial Director at We Are Amnet, and Martin McCulley, a pioneer in real-time content, who are going to walk us through the evolution of real-time marketing, how to make content relevant, and how to reach your audience at the right time and in the right place. I'll then be handing over to Nikki Russell, partner at WDC, to moderate a panel discussion on what's driving real-time content, how brands are responding to this demand, what the right agency model looks like to service this demand, and some of the challenges that brands and agencies need to address. A big thank you to all of our speakers. So let's get started. Over to you, David.
Thank you very much, everybody, for attending this. Mine and Martin's job is somewhat a little bit easier than what the panelists have, because we are the supporting act, if you like. You're all here to listen to the panelists. We're here just to tee up a little bit about real time. The future is real time. Here we go. So let's talk about who's actually presenting. So me, I am the Global Commercial Director for Amnet. So I'm proudly hosting this event, or part of the business that's hosting this event. So really very proud. But I've also got Martin McCulley with me that's going to be in part doing this, or mostly doing this presentation, should I say. He's very much an expert in this field. Martin, why don't you tell us about, just briefly who you are, why you're here?
Okay, hi everyone, my name is Martin. I am the Creative Director of Styling Murmur. We're a creative consultancy who specialise in using data in real time to help brands and businesses communicate with their clients. Just thanks to David and Neil for inviting me today. Really, what I'm talking about is not so much my time as Styling Murmur, but my previous role, which was as Global Design Director for LivePoster, which are a agency and brand owned by Dentsu, and they're specialists in dynamic digital out-of-home media. So over the past 8 to 10 years, I've worked on over 500 campaigns for most of the biggest brands in the world, every single one of them using some form of real-time, be that content, social, data feeds, to create and manage and populate on the fly out-of-home adverts.
Thanks, Mark.
So
that makes me, the fact you worked over on 500 campaigns makes me feel slightly more comfortable that you're my ally on this, I have to say. Let's get into it. So what is real time? So effectively, in short, it's using first and third party data, social media and content. So first party is your data. As a brand owner, that's your data. It's what you own. It's a powerful source, a very powerful source. To create effective and relevant content. I think you're going to hear the word relevance quite a lot in what we're depicting here. Third party is more about what you buy. It's what you buy in. It's a little bit more generic. One could question that it's not as powerful as what you own or as first party data. But Martin, why don't you elaborate on this a little bit?
Yeah. So the big difference, or what I've seen in my kind of previous experience, is where brands and agencies have worked really well in the past is using third-party data. So that's data from external sources, that's from credit card companies, from the big social media platforms, and using some social content. Where the real growth is in the past few years is agencies and brands' internal data. So it's the data they have from their sales data, their customer data, their feedback they get through their Twitter feeds and through their Facebook pages. And that's the real exciting part about this real-time data, is taking advantage of the brand's own internal data and using the external data that everybody else can get. The internal data is great because it really lets you personalize it down to your consumer, whereas the larger data sources you can buy, that's generic and it's anonymized. It's the combination of both of them where the thing really comes into it. So I think the next part really comes into it where we're talking about what the power of real time is. So the power of real time actually turns traditional thinking on its head. So it lets us tell the right story at the right time, not the same story all of the time. So kind of what I mean by this is, it's not necessarily a story. Story could be product, could be service, could be offer. But in traditional advertising and marketing, you tend to tell one message, you do your reach and frequency, and you tell it to everybody. So your message has to be general enough to hit all of the bases all of the time. Whereas you had to do that because there wasn't really any other way you could do that. You couldn't really personalize at scale content. Whereas in the past few years, past kind of 10 years, coming on really in the last 5 years, that is something which we can do now. You can send different messages on different billboards, on different banner ads, on different digital adverts, based upon location, based upon time, based upon social feeds, on social listening. So something happens and you can change it on the fly. And it's all about relevancy. So the more relevant you can make your message, the more likely it is that people will listen to it. And the more likely you're going to listen to it, the more they're going to remember it. And if you're going to remember it, the chances are they're going to buy something more than they would do previously. And luckily, there's some research out there. There's quite a lot of research out there, but the one we can talk about in a public forum actually shows the results are actually very, very powerful.
I was about to jump into that one because knowing you as long as I have, and actually the number of campaigns that you've worked on just over time, I'm going to, as a betting man, I'm going to say you've got some stats here.
Yeah, we've got some stats. So this next stat, this was probably the most recent and largest look at the effectiveness of relevancy or real-time data on advertising and marketing campaigns. This was completed last year. It was a 6-month project, and it was very kindly sent to us by Porterscope. And it was a combination of JC Decor, Clear Channel, and Porterscope, and they used the insights agency called NeuroInsight. And instead of just doing the regular statistical analysis, they actually used some quite interesting NeuroInsight technology to measure the effect on people's brains of different types of adverts. And the interesting part was when you use relevancy-based advertising or real-time content, where the content is more relevant to the person who's looking at it, you see some quite powerful results. The neuroscience results, which is how it affects people's brains, they saw 18% more engagement on the brain scans. The advert recall went up by 17%, and that translated into a 16% effect on the sales of the products. And this is a study done across a number of real live campaigns. It wasn't content that was created specifically for the research. It was actually live campaigns. That then leads to something more interesting about the creative. By using things which are more relevant, people spend 6% of the time looking at the advert more. The spontaneous ad awareness, where unprompted, they can recall the content and the brand in the advert, went up by 17%. And the rating consumers gave the creative increased by 6% as well. When we bring that across into linear content, so real time is great. It's not saying it should replace traditional advertising, but it's definitely something that you should be considering doing because it's very, very powerful and can work hand in hand with traditional reach and frequency campaigns and broadcast campaigns. But if you're just using linear content, you can still use real time to choose which piece of content to show at the right time. And if we just, the campaign analysis looked at this, where it was the same content, but just shown at the right time of day. And they saw big increases in the effectiveness of the campaign and a 12% stronger brain response. So an example of this would be where the product changed, but the time of day changed. So the example in the campaign was a drinks-based campaign where an alcoholic drink shown in the weekday morning performed worse than a more relevant advert, which was shown around about the time when most people started to consider having a drink. There was a 14% increase in brain activity on that. A separate campaign which used 2 different products and changed the product to be more relevant used food products, where if you chose a product on the weekend, which wasn't as relevant for people to eat on the weekend, so maybe sandwiches or snacks that they would have on their lunchtime, but showed a product that they would buy or consume on a weekend, the relevancy went up by 10%. So you can see just from kind of the report itself is really, really comprehensive, and just picking out the headlines here. But you can see the effects here are quite astounding that you can get by just choosing the right message at the right time rather than a generic message all of the time.
I've always been fascinated with this because I always think it's so fast paced. But, you know, I think there's so much we can't talk about, given the forum we're in. You know, you're shackled with some of the stats that we have and some of the case studies. But Martin, I know you've pulled this one together around Costa, and I think it'd be useful actually to contextualize everything that you said now and actually put this into a real time, a real situation that we can all relate to. Can you talk about this Costa piece a little bit?
Yeah, so Costa Coffee, this was a campaign which was Costa Coffee. It was run by an agency called Store Boost. And we worked on it to help with the consultancy and some of the production. Costa Coffee were trialing a campaign and did a campaign in the Westfield shopping centre in London. And what they did was they installed, or Westfield already has footfall sensors all around its shops. What Costa did was install footfall sensors into their shops. And then it was a very simple campaign. It used time of day, a bank of pre-made messages to prompt people to come into the store when the Costa Coffee outlet was not busy. What happened was, campaign ran. If it was in the morning, it would suggest morning snacks. It would suggest croissants and breakfast items in the middle of the day. It would suggest lunchtime snacks in the afternoon, which would suggest tea and cakes to share. And in the evening, it would have messaging around about the things that you could do in Westfield. And all that happened was, as soon as the store level dropped by a agreed amount, the programmatic buy will go out and they will buy a spot on the screens and prompting people with a relevant message to the time of day to come into the store because the store was empty and the queues were down. And the difference was marked. Unfortunately, I can't talk about the sales difference, but it was very, very interesting. The part we can talk about was that the study afterwards showed a 22% increase in prompted ad attribution to the static brand ad. So it's just a static versus a static. So the campaign ran, there was the dynamic advert and there was a static advert. And the dynamic advert performed markedly better than the non-relevant advert did.
So we can pretty much confirm that if you got the data and it's used in the right way, this is really powerful. And we've got quite an eclectic mix in terms of individuals who are on this call today. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. What do you think then the future is let's start with the agencies. What do you think the future of real time for agencies is, Mark?
I think some of the key things for agencies to look at are real time allows better targeting. So instead of having to target through day parts, you can target down to the hour or down to the minute or based upon location. It allows, or it gives you longer view times and more engagement in the content that you're putting out there. So you all know if you're looking at a YouTube trailer, the vast majority of people click through in 1 to 2 seconds. A more relevant advert at the start of something like a YouTube video, people will watch it for longer, which is fantastic. It lets agencies look at targeting and personalizing on a mass scale now, which they never really used to be able to do. And it gives campaigns, creating campaigns that offer more engagement in their creative, which ultimately for agencies, real time will just drive better ROI for their clients.
Okay, and because we've got brand owners on the call, and I don't want to be seen too biased towards the agency, what does it mean for brands and what's the future for the brands?
So the big one for brands, I say, is harnessing their own customer and business data. So the available data sources out there number the thousands, but the most powerful ones are the ones that the brands own themselves. So too often in the campaigns I've worked on in the past, brands have this amazing store of data, but it's not available to the Marcom and the advertising agencies. This data is locked away in internal processes. The best brands are bringing this data to the forefront to let the agencies and their marketing teams use their own personalized data. This lets them do interesting things like faster response to real-time conditions. So a competitor comes out with a product, something's trending on Twitter, something's trending on the high street, or fashion items all over the news. The real-time aspect of campaigns is not instantaneous, but near instantaneous updates to digital creative, so they can get the message out there far, far faster than they used to be able to. And this leads to interesting ideas where brands can start looking at combined marketing spend rather than for individual brands, where they can take advantage of bigger group buys, but then show the most relevant brand in their portfolio or the most relevant product in their portfolio at the right time of day to the right audience that's in front of it. So you get much more, well, essentially, it makes their media spend work far, far harder. So the big thing for brands is your average media spend, you can still spend the same amount of money, but it can give you much better returns than did in the past. So this is where it comes down to for both brands and agencies, is telling the right story at the right time and not the same story all the time. So the key to take away is think about relevancy. Real time lets you be more relevant to your consumer or your client or your customer. It's all about that. How can you be more relevant in their eyes? Because gone are the days where generic messaging wins the day. The new generations coming up want everything about them, and real time lets you target them on an individual basis.
There's clearly a need. I mean, there's clearly as a vision, there's some fantastic stats to back it up. So this is the best slide here, so like summarize that then, the future, if you can take all of that data and just summarize it.
Well, the summary is adverts that people want to see. That's the summary in the future. Real time gives us content, gives us messaging where it takes it away from the big brand message, which is still important. You still need to do your broadcast, and you still need to do your reach and frequency, but it gives a much more one-to-one connection with consumers. It makes them feel special about the brand, or it shows them what the brand means to them in a much more powerful way than a generic message would do.
Yeah, and we're so busy in life, all of us, in terms of whatever you do, whether you work in this industry, whether you're working in a different industry, we're all so busy in life, so like, I guess also what's the lasting question really, Martin, at the end of all of this?
Exactly. Well, the lasting question is, why aren't you using real time? The stats show the increases, you just should be using it. The data's out there, the platforms are available to use, and the expertise is out there. The big question is, why aren't you using real time in your data? I mean, your businesses are real time. Why isn't your advertising?
I'm sure that's going to put some different thoughts into different people's heads, definitely, and I'm sure some challenging thoughts. I'm sure some difference of opinions. I mean, that really is our little intro. But thank you for giving us the little bit of time we had to listen to us drone on. That's it, guys.
Brilliant. Thanks, David. Thanks, Martin. You've sort of you've set the fire around the data geek in me, around the sort of brain response and neuroscience, the cost of coffee relevancy. I love that. So I think those numbers, 18%, 12% higher engagement rates, as you said, it sort of backs up a lot of the stats we're seeing in the market. But that's absolutely wonderful. So thank you so much, David. Martin, you can switch off your cameras, your mics, and I'm going to now hand over to Nikki Russell, partner at WDC, who has always great listening to Nikki. So I'm quite excited about the next sort of 40 minutes and to see what comes out of this. So Nikki, I'm going to hand over to you. Wonderful. Thanks.
I thought you were going to say interested to see what comes out of our mouth.
Well, that as well, of course.
Yeah, okay. About. Hi everyone, I'm Nikki. I work for a company called WDC, and we work with both agencies and brands to optimize their marketing and creative operations. And before that, I was kind of agency side for 10 years. So I'm really familiar with the speed in which things are changing. And this is a subject that we get asked about actually quite a lot, particularly around things like DCO and what role it might play in the future and how it might start affecting business operations. And actually, I really think Martin Sorrell's kind of play into this space has made everyone kind of, sit up and take a little bit more notice. And I think that's why this subject can be quite hard to navigate, as everyone's needs are quite different. The good news is we have a brilliant, diverse set of panelists today, which I think it's going to make for a really good conversation, as everyone's going to be coming at this from a different angle, and they're all going to have very different challenges from one another. So I'm looking forward to diving into that a bit further today. So can I just start by asking each of our panelists, can you just tell us a little bit about you? What role do you play in your organisation, and what does real-time content demand mean specifically for you and your business?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So Ben Lockwood, on-trade marketing manager at Brewdog. I've been here for about 2.5 years, slowly coming out of the pandemic and starting to hit this roadmap at full pace. I guess real-time content is probably not too dissimilar to ASOS in that you've got to show people the situation out in the on-trade. You've got right at the moment, right now, we need to bring that consumer confidence back. So everything needs to be about the here and now and not kind of talking about the last 12 months as such. And then, yeah, there's that much MPD from Brewdog that, you've got to be doing things in real time. And, I'm sure we'll come on later, things like Barnard Castle Eye Test beer and things like that. But when you're kind of like, everything's direct to consumer for the last 12 months, so that's the real time content on that front's been huge. And then just kind of like jumping on the latest trends, making people see what's going on right now, right in the moment, and how we can use that to deliver some great sales at Brewdog and just get people super passionate about beer and super passionate about pubs again.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into that, because Brewdog, I think, is a brand that's renegade spirit. I think everyone just admires. Marcella, obviously you're coming at this from a slightly different angle. Tell us a little bit about what you and your company does. And what.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Marcelo. I'm the CEO and founder of Chimney Americas. I'm actually, my title and role is slightly changing. I'm shifting from CEO to I guess a pretty vague title, but that sounds pretty broad, to global strategic initiatives. And with that being said, it's our business is, we were founded in kind of creative production, and it evolved from that role. So we loosely call ourselves an agency, because we do have strategic and execution divisions within our group. But our role is generally to help marketers see their vision for their strategies around their products or services that they're providing. So for us, we aside from the execution on the production side, we really work closely with technology to kind of execute that vision of things that need to be done. It's interesting hearing all of this, because for us, we're seeing, obviously, technology is so critical to everything we're doing, and including the data and analytics. But we're seeing that this really starting to broaden in how you start to use that data and analytics around longer forms of content, not just the short, disposable or quickly distributed content. So it's been a really evolving opportunity for companies like ours, and working with brands, and how you use that data across those forms of content. So
yeah, and what kind of different clients do you work with, Marcelo?
Yeah, it's a pretty wide group of clients. Everything from working directly, what we call direct to brands, with companies like H&M, retailers. We work with the studios, the streaming networks, the traditional studios around their marketing materials, whether it's internal communications or external marketing around their products. And we still work traditionally with agencies, across the globe, whether they're holding companies or small independent agencies. So we're very fortunate, because we kind of sit independently and are able to work across that kind of wide range of clients.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. So Ben, we'll jump into agencies a little bit later. Ben, can I just ask you, when it comes to agility, Brewdog as a brand obviously has this very good track record of responding in real-time moments, particularly in culture. What's your view on why marketing has had to become so much more agile in order to get to results?
Yeah, I think the pace of the world dictates that there's an expectation from certain consumers now that what you launch or how you activate is relevant to the here and now, probably a lot more so than maybe 5 years ago. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't still plan campaigns, build a story and a message over time. But if you're in that really competitive and noisy market space, and you're the scrappy little dog going up against big beer, and you're trying to sweat every pound of investment, being agile is actually going to get you the greater cut through. And if reaching awareness are your main objectives, if you just want people to know about you, then looking at social media interaction between brands and consumers, or brands and brands, and how agile and responsive it is, and just what reach you get, you can just see how agility is kind of one of the main things that you need to have in terms of that content space. And then you look at Barnard Castle Eye Test. It was it went from idea to visual to product to Good Morning Britain, all in the space of around 48 hours. At a cost of zero pence in terms of PR, and we sold 680,000 cans. So, that was just, let's throw out something that's relevant, relevant to now, is topical, is very Brewdog, the response was to the point of, I think because we're in the middle of a lockdown and lots of people were absorbing content, the response was just off the charts. Okay, we better brew that beer. While we're working out how we brew that beer and get it out there and make it for sale, we've got Good Morning Britain wanting to talk about it on the news the next day. So, and then 4 weeks later, Keir Starmer's in Brewdog Tower Hill drinking a pint of it. So it just shows you that that real-time content is the stuff that can grab the quick headlines and get the PR really turn into overdrive. And Brewdog have managed that kind of better than most in certain aspects, which is great.
Real power in being able to kind of capitalize on those moments, isn't there?
Absolutely. We just, and the thing with Brewdog is, they don't all work. You might throw out 10, 15 real-time content, really quick ideas or PR stories, but you only need a couple of them to land properly. And that's what makes the difference.
When it comes to that kind of that change in pace that we're all trying to keep up with, obviously that comes with its challenges. Marcella, can I just ask you? Obviously, work very closely with this wide-ranging selection of brands. How's the way that, and you sort of said, it's evolving and it's changing. How's the way you work with brands evolved? And how, are you seeing these new operating models emerging out of this kind of fast change?
Yeah, I think shifting, as we focus more working with brands directly and away from their initial relationships with traditional agencies. I think it's an evolving model right now for brands. I think brands are still trying to figure out how to reach their audience. I think the pandemic has been interesting because it was a way to almost have a captured audience where people were home and being able to deliver enormous amounts of content. But what we're finding is that some of the smarter brands that we're working with are realizing that even in the real-time content, it's not the only solution for them. Even listening to Brewdog, it was really interesting because it really hit home for me, where we work with brands where it's an enormous amount of real-time content that's being delivered, but only a few pieces may be the thing that really resonate. And then what we take with some of that is we start to develop some of the other plans around what other content we're going to deliver for those brands, going into longer formats or different kind of branded entertainment into delivering messaging for themselves. We find the most effective brands are the ones that realize it's not just one solution. Everyone tends to jump on the data and analytics on one thing in specific, but it's such a wide range. So what you said at Brewdog really resonated with us. Thank you.
Yeah. It's funny. I always see this sometimes. If you watch little under sixes play football or soccer, they all start running after the ball, and they're all trying to grab the ball. But the reality is that it needs strategic planning in order to be able to start scoring the goal. So I know what you mean. There's room for both, but there is that pull, isn't there, to just run behind the most thing that everyone's talking about. That's why I think it's quite hard sometimes to understand or navigate it, because it seems to just overpower everything.
Yeah, you need a wide view. You can't just be one thing specifically. So,
Ben, I just want to go back to something we touched upon earlier. I think something that we all admire is the boldness of Brewdog's communication, particularly in those relevant moments. What is it about the culture at Brewdog that allows you to be so responsive and bold in your communications?
I think we've got this ingrained mentality to scrap. I mentioned scrap before, but scrap for every sale, innovate wherever possible, and take risks when it feels like it's going to yield a good result. So basically, own your own numbers, count time in dog years, not human ones. Push yourselves to fight, push yourselves to take the fight to big beer and make people as passionate about great beer as we are. And if that involves some quick decisions and some risks, just do it if you think it's the right thing to do. So that empowerment's really strong within the culture. And I know this gets quoted a lot of Brewdog by James, but the Elon Musk one where he challenges people to try and deliver their 5-year business plan in 6 months, that gets thrown at us a lot. So if we go with an idea to James or someone else in that kind of head of marketing, the answer that always comes back is how you're going to do it quicker. So that just rings through everything we do, from content and activation and just everything. So everything's all about speed, doing it as quickly as you can. And I think this leads to our comms being kind of like super responsive, super relevant, super on topic. And I think probably one of the, I was trying to think earlier today about what best example I could do. And there was just a really fun one on social media where a non-league club, Basingstoke, did a shirts competition where they did a shirt design for loads of famous brands and did a knockout competition as a poll, and Brewdog's kit ended up winning. So we ended up where we're talking to someone about a bar in Basingstoke, we're talking to the club about putting, you know, some Brewdog beers in the clubhouse at the ground, and we're talking to them about letting them have that shirt as their shirt for next season. So I think, you know, some of our big competitors that take them weeks and weeks to make that decision, as in we just went straight in and did it. So how can you jump on real-time content from someone else as well as create your own? And that's what just creates this buzz and this excitement. And I'm sure Basingstoke, when they did it, knew that we might do that anyway, so they were being quite smart themselves. But yeah, it was just all good fun. But it's all ingrained, and it's that mentality of kind of where the little dog's in the fight, so we've got to scrap for everything we can get.
How do you, I mean, it's you know, something that we always found when I was agency side. You know, I worked with some quite renegade, I mean, I was at Nomley for 4 years, and it was, how do we keep that culture as we scale? You know, that was something that was top of mind, because that scrappy mentality, and what I love about Brewdog actually is you have a real test and learn. Like if it doesn't go right, you go, yeah, that didn't go right, and that's going straight back into the system to improve next time. Like how do you, are you worried about not being able to protect that as you scale?
I think James is really good at being totally transparent on that message. So we have a lot of, like yesterday there was 205 people on an all hands meeting on Zoom where it was like a business update and the 10-year plan that some of you might have seen on LinkedIn yesterday. And I think he's really transparent about how difficult it is to maintain culture as you grow, but it's not impossible. So I think it comes from the top. And I think as long as that message is delivered down the top, you're not going to touch everyone, but as long as the majority of the people within your company, that the people that are touching customers, the people that are making decisions that are front facing, and you know, the ones that are producing content, I think you'll be okay. But yeah, it's absolutely a challenge. And you know, how much longer can we claim to be the scrappy dog in the fight when we're, you know, growing at a rate of knots? So it is difficult, and the more success stories you sell, the less you're seen as the little dog. So we'll see how it goes the next 12 months.
Well, as the little dogs, you don't have to give anything away, but I'm looking forward to your response to the Super League. I have to say, I'm waiting, watching and waiting to see how you come out.
Actually, if we do anything on that, then it was me that threw it into a WhatsApp conversation at about 7:30 this morning. So if you do see anything, I'm taking the credit now.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, let me say, everyone's waiting. I'm waiting to see what you can say. Marcella, from your experience, do you feel that some brands are more suited to adopting a kind of real-time marketing strategy? And if so, what are the industries or which industries are you seeing with the greatest kind of real-time investment?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, it's been interesting. I think some of the kind of starter brands, I think, are a little bit more apt to working with real-time marketing and taking a little bit more risk. But that varies across the type of brands they are and the audience that they're actually trying to reach. I think one of the places that you see some of this real-time, I think it's historically been this way. It's just the technology has changed on the entertainment marketing side. So whether it's the streamers or the studios, they've essentially, in some ways, and I think Nikki can speak a little bit more clearly to this, but they've always worked in some form of real-time marketing where they've adapted their marketing around their film or their TV show, and over time adapted it without data and analytics. Now that's accelerated all of that. So it's a pretty wide variety. I mean, for us, we work with some premium brands that aren't as adept to working with the real-time risk-taking marketing and some of those things. And then we work with some small starter brands or challenging brands or direct-to-consumer brands that seem to be more adaptive to that. It all depends on their consumer, but it's a pretty wide variety for us.
Looking to the future a bit, Marcelo, what I think is really interesting is the impact that this is going to start having on agencies. So how do you see agencies adapting in terms of their setup, their structure, and, you know, and even their skills to manage this surge in demand for real-time content?
You know, I think this is a conversation we can have for quite some time. I think the larger traditional holding company agencies are going to continue to feel the challenges of the nimbleness of where the world is continuing to head. For companies like ourselves, and there's a large expansion of these independent, nimble agencies on the execution side to help brands deliver that. I think brands continue to grow internally with their marketing services, their creative services, their digital teams, but still at the scale to be able to scale the volume of what's needed. They're going to need to be a continued partnership with smaller, more independent, nimble type companies. At least that's what we believe, and that's kind of what we preach and what we think is really happening in the world. But for us, we think it's an exciting time because it's still kind of an ongoing learning process as opposed to something that's been stuck traditionally for quite some time.
Yeah, and I find that, you know, the opportunity is to either lean in to that collaboration or kind of, you know, recalibrate how they now partner with different kind of third parties, if you like, in order to be able to get this that's proper connective tissue and a proper, you know, consumer experience. But I think it's definitely going to be in that, you know, it can be quite creative territorial, or, you know, here is my format that ends at this kind of our creative ends here. I find that there is a shift on their behalf, isn't there, for them to be able to lean in if they're going to keep on and be relevant.
Exactly. And I mean, even, you know, one of the things we're finding is that a lot of brands that we're working with have so many valuable assets that they've sat in their portfolio for such a long time, and how they even take the data and information to repurpose those assets to create ongoing content. And so then that comes through technology. And so brands are recognizing that they've sat on these assets for quite some time and didn't even realize that they had value in all of that. So just their mindset and their thinking, I think some of it's education, some of it's happening in real time in front of them. And some of them is just, you know, being adaptive and working in this kind of a new environment.
Yeah. And actually, Martin, can I just come back to you actually on the same point? Because I do find that the agencies can kind of get their knickers in a twist a little bit about where they play and plug in to kind of real-time content. But there is this difference between consumer comms and consumer experience. So from your point of view, what do you think the main stumbling blocks are for agencies when it comes to real-time content on your experience?
The big stumbling blocks, or the first one, is ownership, where it's multi-agency teams. It's who's the person's in charge, or which agency is the lead. So the big holding companies always think they're the most important people in the process. Quite often, though, for kind of real-time marketing like this, it's actually the smaller agencies who have more touch points with the customers. Because while the big campaigns, the big broadcast and campaigns are fantastic, quite often they don't engage too much with actual consumers. So it's the teams, the Marcom teams, the guys from the social media, the Facebook and the Twitter feeds, and the customer service people. Those are the guys who often have to are the face of the company, more so than the big brand TV adverts that these brands have. So it's the biggest thing is sharing of content or sharing of assets. The big agencies do the advertising campaigns. They kind of stop once the TV commercial's gone. They don't realize that actually we're going to need to use that on our website and our social media feed, and our Twitter guys are going to need it to do this in our social feeds. So the first thing is kind of who's in, you know, the biggest problem is kind of who's the lead on this? What are we going to do? What's the structure? Where's the strategy for how we take this massive, amazing campaign and make it work on all the different touch points that the digital world now gives us? Just kind of picking on some stuff that Nikki said was the bigger agencies, quite often, they can't give the resource needed to provide all of these assets. They just look at it as we're doing our TVC, we're going to do our 6 sheets, they're 96, and then. But what the brands actually need is content that can go out on the social channels, because social channels and digital, that's every single day, multiple posts a day. It's not one campaign that runs for 2 weeks. So that's one of the big challenges is speed of turnaround and agility that the smaller agencies can do and the larger agencies sometimes struggle with.
I feel like it's a creative approach as well, because when you're closer to that consumer experience, it's more of an editorial way of approaching creative. And I think, again, it's about that linear process again. Everyone thinks it's the one size fits all for everything. And it's about adapting and understanding that the roles are different depending on what area of if you're doing campaign building, obviously craft is something that is important. But once you're getting, like you say, down to the social channels, you have to act more as an editor, because getting it out of time is way more important than getting it right.
Yeah. And it's producing those assets in the formats and the variety that can be reused time and time again across all of these different channels. Sometimes you can't have the perfect lockup. You do a 96 sheets and you go millimeter perfect. You stick something out in 10 seconds on social media. You don't have 6 weeks. Well, you don't have 6 weeks these days anyway, but you don't have days and days and days of working over a poster design. You've got minutes or hours to try and respond to something that's happening.
Yeah. Content, like you enjoy it for 5 minutes and then it's gone.
Well, that's a problem is people's attention spans and consumerism is they just want new stuff. So if you ever launch a social media campaign and you go to a brand who's never done it before, they kind of think, oh yeah, we send out a newsletter once a week and we contact them twice a month by drops and we do this. It's like, no, you got to do it every day, and you got to do it multiple times a day. Otherwise, you disappear off the feeds, or you don't trend anymore. You vanish. It's a different ball game compared to what it used to be. It's so much more content, faster, and reused in multiple different channels. And really, you need the flexibility. An agency who's very, very flexible and can do that. Usually, to the bigger agencies, the less account managers you have, and the closer you are to the creatives, usually the better results they get as well.
So we're sort of coming to the end. We've managed to nail that time in really well.
Yes, wonderful. As I would expect, Nikki, with you facilitating. So listen, that was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, as you said, we've got 60 seconds left. I mean, the thing is, there's so many big topics there, right? There's Emma was talking about quality checking for always on content, which I think is such a big challenge at the moment. Culture of agility at Brewdog, this shift to data and creativity and the integration of those elements into the ecosystem. So, lots for us to wrestle with, I think. And I think when we came up with this idea, this topic, we were always conscious that it was almost so vast and meant so much to so many people that we were going to be able to pull at various strings and start thinking about the next event actually on that basis. So I just wanted to sort of say, first of all, because time's almost up, a big thank you to all of our speakers. I know it's always great to get the amazing insights. You guys live and breathe this world, so really important to hear, what's going on in your world. Obviously, Nikki, for facilitating again, thank you so much for that, and Amnet, of course, for hosting today's event as well. That was really enjoyable, and of course, thanks to everyone who's joined us today. We had a great audience, and if there are any questions afterwards, feel free to send them over to us or go onto the Amnet website, weareamnet.com, and just post them on there and we can respond accordingly.
I'd just like to add in from an Amnet point of view that it's been really appreciative of all of you guys giving up your time to do this. It's been fascinating actually listening to some different views and different opinions and different insights. And I really am appreciative of all of you coming on here. I think it's been fun.
Yeah, lots of fun. Yeah, and then, well, until next time, right? I mean, we've done a couple of these now. Content at scale is a big topic for us. We want to keep pushing the boundaries of the discussion. So
absolutely, you're all welcome to come back.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, and we'll leave it there.
Nice meeting you.